Hello?
Hey, Zach. It's Brian with the New American Media. You are live on the Unhappy Hour. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good today. How about you?
You know, living the dream. I went over a couple of things. I know we're definitely going to get in as your role as an NBA scout. You're definitely following. The draft is only a couple of weeks away, and we're in the middle of the playoffs, but I did touch on three stories, one being Tony Parker getting hurt in a nightclub, the Chicago Bears' Charles Tillman not liking Packers math, and Kevin Durant's no call on that final shot, and then the double blocking / goaltending call that led to a Shane Battier three-pointer, which was a 5-point swing in a 4-point game. So if you wanted to talk about any four of those before we get going, the ball's in your court.
We can talk about last night's finals game. I think it was one of the best finals games I've ever actually watched. I think the Heat got very lucky at the end that they were able to win that game. They really blew it badly, and they couldn't finish. But, I mean, the one thing you notice is LeBron James did not choke under the, down the stretch, which I think is the biggest, key of last night's game. He drained 2 free throws. He's been so basically unclutch in situations like that for his entire career, in the playoffs, and he finally did it. That's not saying he's over the hump or anything, because they almost blew that lead. He fouled Durant on the last play of the game.
He did.
Which could have easily, they could have sent him to the line. It was definitely it was a game for the ages last night. Let's just say that. It was a fantastic game. And I think you have to look, too, at the refs. I think Miami got just about every possible call last night in that game. It was pretty absurd. It's just like, I think the NBA wants to see the series go to 7 games and nothing less, because, the viewership is so high on the series right now. You have some of the league's biggest superstars. This is a better match. Everybody always wanted to see Kobe and LeBron. I think Durant-LeBron is a matchup for the ages. I really do.
And you have a situation where David Stern has been at the center of some controversy this week, the commissioner of the NBA. He was on Jim Rome's program, and it got really awkward. It got really weird because Jim Rome brought up the fact that some people are saying, well, the NBA owned the New Orleans Hornets, and yes, the deal has been done to sell them, but maybe it was conditional upon getting the first overall pick, and oh, guess what? They got the pick. People are saying it. David Stern goes off the handle and asks Jim Rome if he stopped beating his wife, and, just kind of really didn't handle the situation properly or like an adult. And a lot of people are just questioning the refereeing in light of the fact that Tim Donaghy, that there have been scandals in NBA refereeing before, and David Stern's at the center of this draft pick controversy. What do you think the refs are actually trying to extend the series, or it's just kind of playing out?
I think the NBA this is just my opinion. I've always felt the NBA was a little thick. Especially in a game like last night where had the Heat gone down 2-0, there's a good chance the series turns into a 5-game series. I always feel like the refs have, the refs can completely change around a game. I still remember the game like it was yesterday in 2007 when it was Spurs-Suns. When Donaghy was repping that game, it cost the Suns a chance to go to the championship, and they probably would have beaten the Cavs in 4. It's just like, you look at that, and it's just like, wow. Sometimes you watch a game and you go, there's no way this game isn't fixed. That's the way I see it. I think a lot of games can be decided by the outcome of the refs, especially in a close game like last night. And, there was the no call on Durant. Obviously, we've already talked about, like you said, the goaltending on the double block. There's a lot of key aspects that go into it. And I think the refs do play a big part in the game. I don't know if the NBA is actually fixed. It may or may not be. That's something we'll never know. But I think David Stern might have a little something to do with it. I've always thought that personally.
Well, the league is doing okay right now, and at the end of the day, people just want to know: is this WWF/WWE style sports entertainment, or is this a fair and balanced competition under an organized and predetermined set of rules? If it's going to be one, fine, be an exhibition thing. The Harlem Globetrotters were great.
I don't think the games. I don't think you go in there with the players going, okay, the Miami Heat are going to win tonight. There's only so much the refs can do to decide a game. They can definitely decide a close game. But if the Thunder would have gone out there and drained every single shot last night, there's no stopping that. If they were going to win by 30, they're going to win by 30. You can't prevent that. And I think sometimes the refs, though, do, like I said, I've always felt this way, have the ability to decide a close game, and, a lot of times they do. I mean, I was shocked at the no call last night on LeBron James at the end of that game. That would have given him 5 fouls, and that game probably would have gone into overtime, and you would have had Durant and LeBron both with 5 fouls going into overtime. It would have been a pretty a pretty interesting story last night. I think it would have been fantastic if that game gone into overtime. Or you watch LeBron in the ball with his, you watch LeBron in overtime with the ball in his hands. Or actually in the last 5 seconds, when if Durant would have made that shot, there would have been about 5-6 seconds on the clock. You would have seen LeBron or Wade with the ball in their hands in the last few seconds. I think that would have made an even more interesting story. But, I was upset with the call last night. Like I said, honestly, I just want to see a fair series and fair calls. That's all I care about, and I just want to see a really good series play out. That's what I care most about.
We are talking live with NBA scout and lifelong Cleveland sports fan Zak Baris. You can find Zak on Twitter at ZBARIS. Go ahead and follow him there. Zak, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to hit and do our station identification break on the TNAM radio network, and we're going to come right back and talk about the NBA draft, where you see the players going. Maybe we'll even do an impromptu mock draft up to 10.
You were listening to the Unhappy Hour sports radio show on the newamericanmedia.com.
We're continuing our conversation here with NBA scout and lifelong Cleveland sports fan Zak Baris. You can find Zak at ZBARIS on Twitter. Zak, let's talk about the NBA draft. You were out covering the draft combine. What do you think people don't know right now regarding the draft? We know Anthony Davis is going to be number 1. It's kind of starting to round out into the top 5. What about the process are we not aware of, and what do you expect to see happening in the first 10 picks? Are you comfortable doing a 10-pick mock draft, 1 through 10?
Yeah, I mean, I need to get a list up in front of me so I have my players there, because I really don't think, I think it all depends what Charlotte does at number 2 will determine the outcome of the draft. It's either if they're going to take Kidd-Gilchrist or Thomas Robinson, I think those are the key right there, because it can completely screw up the rest of the top 5, even the top 6. Because if, let's say right now, I'll start mocking it up right now. Let's do one where Charlotte takes Kidd-Gilchrist, takes Thomas Robinson at 2. Then at 3 for Washington, you have Brad Beal or Michael Kidd-Gilchrist sitting there. I think Brad Beal is a perfect complement to John Wall, but they already have Jordan Crawford in Washington, so I'd personally go with Kidd-Gilchrist. I think he's a game-changer defensively, and that's what Washington needs. Then the Cavs are another wild card. Apparently they love Harrison Barnes. No team is ever going to come out and tell you what they're planning on doing in the draft, and that's what I want to say first before I say this. Some people think the Cavaliers love Barnes. They've been in love with Beal for a long time, too. We have honestly no clue what they're going to do. They're holding a private workout session, either believe today or tomorrow, between Harrison Barnes and Brad Beal. They're having them both come work out at the same time at the facility. That will give them basically the outcome of who they're going to take if both players are available at pick number 4. So we can't honestly even determine that. That's why mock drafts are always so. None of them are even close to being correct most of the time, because you always have a team that's going to pull a wild card and take someone who's not supposed to go.
Well, Zak, let me jump in, because that's part of the fun of the March Madness tournament. I mean, when do you know when Duke's going to get knocked out? Is a Kansas going to go down early? And it's part of the fun. You look at Stephen A. Smith. He called the first game. I think the exact same score is what the outcome was. So yeah, I mean, there's always wild cards, and none of us know for certain. But I'm paying more attention to the NBA draft this year than I have maybe since LeBron came into the league, knowing that the Cavs were picking number 1, because we have a lot of rebuilding to do. And I saw something that Zydrunas Ilgauskas is in the Cavs front office as, I think, assistant general manager. I didn't really catch that.
He has been working. I don't know if he's the assistant general manager. I know he's been working very close though with Chris Grant, and I know he's working with. I believe he's also working with Tristan Thompson this offseason. To help him improve his game. I think that'll be big. Definitely, because Ilgauskas always had a great shot and was one of the better shooting centers in the league for a long. He was a great. He had a great mid-range jumper.
He did.
Or a great mid-range shot. I don't want to say a jumper. Great mid-range shot, and he was always a fantastic free throw shooter. For a guy who's 7'3" to shoot around 80% for your career, from the line is absolutely unbelievable. For a guy that big. And looking at it now is I think he's a great fit in the front office. You know, he's a Cleveland guy. You know, spent his whole career with the Cavs, other than the fact that, you know, the 1 year with the Heat where he tried to go win a ring, and I don't blame him. But looking at it, I think the Cavaliers will choose between Barnes and Beal if you know, they get the choice. You know, with Brad Beal, you're going to get an excellent player, you know, basically in the Ray Allen mode. You know, he has a chance to be a star in the league. Harrison Barnes is not as polished on defense. I don't think he'll ever be a great defender, especially like Brad Beal. And, you know, but the Cavaliers need a wing desperately like a Harrison Barnes, a guy who can score. You know, they lack a second scorer, especially with all the basically criticism Antoine Jamison takes is the Cavaliers, you know, last year. They would not have won nearly as many games without Antoine Jamison last year. You know, we needed a second scorer. We needed a guy who could shoot the ball. You know, we didn't have it. You know, Jamison could create his own shot. And I think that's the one thing the Cavaliers really like about Harrison Barnes is that, you know, he can't create his own shot, but it doesn't matter because you have Kyrie Irving there. Harrison Barnes could be a lights-out shooter with the Cavs, you know, because we have that point guard already in play,
and then
which really helps.
Okay, and then at number 5.
At number 5, I think the Kings. I think the Sacramento Kings are a huge wild card because if Kidd-Gilchrist is off the board,
you said Drummond,
I mean,
right?
I mean Andre Drummond. You have to begin to look at that. I mean, I think he'd be a good pairing next to DeMarcus Cousins. But the problem is with the Sacramento Kings is though the Sacramento Kings are a lot like they're a lot like the Timberwolves were a few years ago, where they just kept drafting and drafting. Their team is all young. They don't have any veteran leadership on there, and I think they're just really bad. You know, they need to get rid of Tyreek Evans. You know, they have a bunch of guys who are shooters on that team. You know, I knew when J.J. Hickson was going over there last year, I said, this does not look like it's going to work in Sacramento. With
you know what that reminded me of? It reminded me of when another athlete with Ohio connections ended up over in that general vicinity on the left coast when Terrell Pryor got picked by the Raiders. I said, oh, no. That is the last place Terrell Pryor needs to be. He needs to be with a Bill Belichick or somebody that's going to, you know, really tutor this kid, not run wild in Oakland.
The problem with the Sacramento Kings is their problem is that they have a bunch of guys who like to shoot. They love to shoot the ball, but they don't have anyone who can pass the ball. You know, Jimmer Fredette's a shooter. Isaiah Thomas is a shooter. You know, DeMarcus Cousins loves to shoot. You know, Tyreek Evans. You know, that's their problem. And I don't see Sacramento improving at all. I mean, Sacramento is one of those guys, you know, they could take Damian Lillard at 5, the point guard, and, you know, he's more of a scorer, you know, he's a scorer first, you know. He's not a pass-oriented point guard. So I think that's a bad fit. Andre Drummond is a huge wild card here because he's either going to be the next superstar or he's going to be the next Kwame Brown. You know, that worries me. I think in the top 4, if he were to go in the top 4 or even top 5, I think it's a huge mistake because you have 5 guys with very high potential that will most likely meet their potential goals someday or get around to it. You know, Drummond might have the second highest ceiling in the draft behind Anthony Davis, but his odds of making it in the league, I feel, are so slim just because he didn't produce in college. You know, that's always red light number 1 right there. You know, if a guy does not produce in college at all, you have to wonder why. That's number 1. 2, you have to look at the system. I think that the biggest thing is you have to look at the system. Did he have a lot of flaws in his game because of the system he played in? Kind of like at UCLA, basically, whenever players go there in Ben Howland's system, no one ever seems to flourish or look like a great player. You know, Kevin Love was very good in college, but nobody thought he would be this good in the pros. Russell Westbrook was a 2-guard who turned the ball over all the time and couldn't shoot in college. Suddenly gets to the pros, he's a pretty good shooter. You know, he's cut down on his turnover ratio, and now he's he's one of the best point guards in the league. You know, there's guys like Darren Collison. You never thought he could be a great point guard in the league. You know, he's a second-round pick for a reason. You know, look at him. He was a starting caliber point guard in a very good team in Indiana this year for most of the year until George Hill replaced him. But he had a fantastic rookie season with New Orleans when Chris Paul was on. You know, that's the thing is I look a lot at the system, how the guys play with their coach, you know, whether guys flourish or not. It's like Joakim Noah, and it's the same thing at Florida with Brad Beal, especially in Florida. Is you have guys that didn't flourish in Billy Donovan's system. You know, they were granted they won 2 straight titles. You know, they were good, but you know, Joakim Noah did off way better than everyone thought he would be. Al Horford is one of the best, you know, power forward/centers in the league. that's the thing with the guys from Florida. It's very hard to tell, and same with David Lee, what you're getting from Billy Donovan and Ben Howland's system. They're system guys, they're system-oriented, and they don't let a player flourish on his natural skill set. And I think that's what you have to look at now with Andre Drummond. Did he not do particularly well because of the system he was in? I don't think so. Because this year they have two guys projected to go in the top 15 picks, and that's Andre Drummond and Jeremy Lamb. When you have two guys projected in the top 15 and you fail to make the tournament, something tells me right there that something isn't right, and it has nothing to do with with Jim Calhoun there, the coach at UConn. I think that Drummond is a huge potential for a Boston. I just wouldn't be able to risk it, even if I were. I think Sacramento can risk it, but
your report would say stay away. You move on. Yes, there's a potential for a huge upside, but no. If you had to place the bet on red or black on the roulette wheel, or pick a number and go with it, you would say no. You're going to pick somewhere else. If that was your team.
Kind of, and the funny thing about it is, if you look at a guy like Perry Jones, who I think, who probably did he obviously didn't do the right thing by staying in school. Like last year, he was a guaranteed top 3 pick had he come out last year. And because everybody saw it, he's got ridiculous potential. He has unbelievable potential. Well, he comes back to Baylor, puts up identical numbers that he put up last year, didn't improve anything in his game, didn't improve any aspect of his game. And now you see him in mock drafts sliding all the way down as low as 17 to 18 to Boston. And for a guy with ceiling high potential, you look at that now, you saw 2 years of it, you know what, I really don't think he's ever going to reach his potential. And that's the thing with Andre Drummond. Had Andre Drummond returned to school next year and put up the same numbers he was putting this year, he'd be a mid to late first-round pick, because everybody would know he would be the next Kwame Brown. But if he went back to school next year and started putting up Amari-type numbers and putting up 22 and 12 a game, people would tell this guy's the number 1 overall pick. It just depends. I think he came out a little early, but, he's a guaranteed top 10 pick right now. And, even though he has a lot of flaws in his game, some scouts are in love with him. They think he can be corrected. I'm personally not one of them.
So let's round out the top 5 then. To recap the top 5, and let's try to get it to
number
10.
1, you're going to have Anthony Davis going to the New Orleans Hornets. Number 2, the Charlotte Bobcats. Right now, it looks like they've soured a little bit on Kidd-Gilchrist, or they're just in love with Thomas Robinson. You have Thomas Robinson going 2. I just don't see how Washington could pass on Kidd-Gilchrist at 3, especially when they have Jordan Crawford there and Brad Beal, like I said earlier. So I'm going to say Kidd-Gilchrist going 3 to Washington. I'm going to go Brad Beal, number 4 to Cleveland, and I'm going to say Harrison Barnes, 5 to the Sacramento Kings.
Okay, moving on to number 6. I want to take us down to Jared Sullinger, wherever he ends up. What do you see happening at 6?
Portland, I believe, is selecting at 6. I feel they'll take probably. Here's the thing: I think Portland's going to jump in here and take Andre Drummond, because he could be a very good fit next to LaMarcus Aldridge there, and Portland desperately needs a center. Marcus Camby's obviously gone. Greg Oden is, nowhere. I don't even know if he's touched the basketball court in the past 3 years. But he's nowhere to be found, and he'll get a minimum deal somewhere in free agency. I think Andre Drummond right here to Portland is a perfect fit, because they can go and either pick 11, they can go and take Kendall Marshall from North Carolina, the point guard, or if Damian Lillard, which I doubt is sitting there, he could be available too. And I think the biggest aspect to help Drummond improve his game is to pair him with a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge, an all-star power forward. Take some of the pressure off of him.
Then after Portland, you got the Warriors at number 7.
I think that's another pick where it can go. I'm trying to think who could go 7. A lot of people had Harrison Barnes falling to 7. I don't. I think this is as high as Terrence Jones can be taken here from Kentucky. I don't know if he will, but I think he is. I think he'd be a perfect fit for the Warriors. I really like Terrence Jones a lot. I'm going to say Terrence Jones at 7. And then 8, the Toronto Raptors. Looks like it's going to be Deion Waiters, the shooting guard from Syracuse. Apparently, they made him a pre-draft promise. That doesn't mean he won't. That doesn't mean he'll go there, but that's what it sounds like, because he canceled his workouts with other teams. So it sounds like he's going to be a Toronto Raptor.
Is that risky or is that smart?
Right now. to make a pre-draft promise. A lot of players are made pre-draft promises, and then the team will go and select someone else. That happens all the time.
So is that unsmart for the player to cancel his other workouts?
Oh, I think it's a very bad move for a player to do that, because what happens is he's looking and going, other teams go, we never worked him out. We don't know what he's going to be like. Let's take the guys that we worked out. We know what they're going to do. We know what they're going to do. I think that's a big issue too right here. Because I think you really have to look at that. And I think Deion Waiters made a mistake.
Then you got the Pistons and the Hornets rounding out 9 and 10.
The Pistons could be a fit for Jared Solinger, or even a guy like Myers Leonard can go as high as Detroit, or John Henson. Henson didn't have great workout numbers. He didn't show up. He didn't show much during the combine. I think it's a little worried, but I think they want to get a power forward or a center to pair with Greg Monroe. This is like I said, you can either see Solinger go high here, or you can see a guy like John Henson or Myers Leonard or even Tyler Zeller. I'm going to go right here and I'm going to plug in. Let's put Solinger to the Pistons here at 9. Even though I think he's going to go a little bit later. Actually, you know what? I feel more comfortable putting Myers Leonard here at 9.
Okay. And then that leaves the second pick now. We got the Hornets going again.
I think New Orleans is going to go big. This is where I think Solinger's going. I'm going to put Solinger at 10 to the Hornets to pair with Anthony Davis. I think that's going to make a really good front court. Or, like I said, as you can see, Kendall Marshall at this pick.
Well, there's a couple other players with some name notoriety. We're talking with NBA scout Zak Baris. You got Tyler Zeller over at North Carolina. You got Austin Rivers from Duke. Some other names still sitting out here. And in a couple of these, you have Fab Melo from Syracuse sliding to 24 at Cleveland to team him up over there. Do you have any thoughts on those players, if anyone is?
Fab Melo, don't forget, was suspended for the tournament, so we didn't get to see a lot of him in the tournament. That's when guys usually, that's when they're on their biggest stage, and that's where names are made.
Right.
Fab Melo, I can tell you right now, if the Cavaliers draft him, he's a project in the making. He's a purely defensive-oriented center. He's not going to give you really anything on the offensive glass, which, I feel the Cavs need. But, I personally, if a guy like Mo Harkless is sitting there, the small forward from St. John's, or if you have like Royce White from Iowa State, or even Jeff Taylor from Vanderbilt, if any of those guys are sitting there, I would prefer them, because we do need a wing. This is if the Cavaliers select Beal at 4. It could all change. If they select Barnes, then we suddenly don't need a small forward anymore. I think the Cavaliers, though, could take Fab Melo at 24. I think he's a fit. I think another guy who fits too is possibly getting a backup guard, either a Marcus Teague or a Doran Lamb later in, early in the second round. I think there's a lot of fits there. Fab Melo, though, I just haven't seen enough of him. I haven't seen enough of his workouts, actually, to see if his offensive game has improved. But he's one of those guys, it's kind of like a Varejao situation going in there early in his career. He could take 4 to 5 years to develop offensively, and I'm not saying he's never going to be putting up more than 10 to 12 points a game. But if he gives you 8 points and 10 rebounds a game someday, that's great if you're getting that out of the 24th spot. And the Cavaliers do need desperate help in the front court this year, unless they can sign a guy like Omar Ashik, who I personally really like from the Chicago Bulls. I think it would be a fantastic starting center for the Cavs.
All right, well, let's take a quick break right there. We're going to hit reset, give our station identification on the TNAM radio network. We're talking with Zak Baris, NBA scout and lifelong Cleveland sports fan. You can follow Zak at ZBARIS on Twitter.